Cafe. I'm your host, Rafael Moreno. From her work as a photographer, she has appeared in the likes of Forbes and Time magazines. Native Japanese immigrant to the United States, Yuko Udo is a multi-dimensional artist and creator. She uses storytelling to create community, focusing on diversity, mental health and wellness issues, and women's empowerment. Yuko, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Fantastic. So, Yuko, I have just a few questions so we can get to know you better. But being that you are a native Japanese immigrant to the United States, what have you faced under the Trump administration?
So, interesting story is that before the 2016 election, I was thinking, okay, if he gets elected, if he become a president, I'm gonna peace out, right? And I was at the point of like, okay, I could still go back to Japan if that happened. And once that happened, and what I saw amongst my peer was really the devastation and how much people are hurting. And that made me actually want to stay in this country, which is kind of interesting. It makes me want to fight with them. It makes me want to stand with them. It makes me realize how much more love and healing that needed to be happen in this country. So I personally am very fortunate to say that because I consider myself as a privileged immigrant. For A, I'm from Japan, and B, I am documented. I think that is such a privilege that I get to have. So um, yes, the paperwork took longer than I expected. Like there are things that I wish I could do, and it's clear that I am choosing not to be an American citizen, although I am qualified to do the citizen application and test. Right? I personally don't see much of an impact or discrimination that was like that people would have towards me as a person. I never had a personal experience, luckily. However, I'm hearing a lot of things that happens around me, and I'm starting to seeing a lot more things that's happening. So I'm learning, and I became more curious and conscious about like my peer and not my peer, not only as a Japanese people or immigrant or like human being as a whole.
Yeah, you know what? I'm so glad that you brought in privilege to the conversation because we often think as immigrants as just like one group of people going through the same strife together. And that's actually not the case because it does have a lot to do as to where it is that you're stemming from. Like you're from Japan, you're going to have a very different reaction from someone, let's say, that's from Mexico, or your experience might be totally different from someone that's from France, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are so many different degrees and levels as to how it is that we as a community treat people who are immigrant or even label as immigrant.
Mm, thank you for acknowledging that. Yeah, there are so many different types of immigrant, even within the Asian community, right? Like being here in the United States for over a decade, being with a lot of immigrant and second generation folks, like even within Asian community, there are different type of Asians, right? Like there are Asian folks who were born in their whatever they are from, like myself, and chose to be here, whether that is as a child or as an adult. Like coming here as a child and adult, that's a completely different thing, right? And all are like all different kind of dynamic I started to learn that I wasn't aware of before.
One of my best friends lives in Flushing. And as I was walking to his house, there were two people that were arguing, two women, and they were arguing in English. It was poor and broken English. And then there was a person that was standing right beside me that said, well, why don't they just communicate in their own language? And I just turned to him and said, it's because they're from different places of the world. They just happen to be Asian. There's a difference, right?
So good.
But it's it's a conversation that we get to be in because even in New York, we still put people in these categories and labels, not understanding that they are of different cultures, different peoples, different languages, right? So we get to really step into that conversation as well.
Mm.
Now, you as a creative, I want to know how has COVID-19 affected you personally?
The COVID-19. Me personally, greatly impacted by COVID-19, especially for financial. Um, yeah, my finance and income that was supposed to happen pre COVID-19, it's all gone. So the first couple of days of whole quarantine, the shutdown, and I was in my space of like, screw this, I don't want to deal with this anymore. I had my moment and I wanted to do my old Bridget Jones, like screaming, crying, yelling, and that was my couple of days. But aside from that, I am blessed to say that I live in a household that I have a roommate who are also creative. And so I am in self quarantine, but I am not completely feeling alone compared to living in a studio by myself, right? I would say because of that quarantine and I am not working, I actually had an opportunity to be in communication with my family in Japan a lot more because they're concerned about me. Also, they are like saying that I don't have to worry about if you're working or not. And they like, if I'm calling you when you're working, I'm gonna bother you, so I don't want to do it. So that was my parents' story, and now they know that I'm not working, and they call me all the time. So, and even in this devastating situation, I am having a moment to say I get to reconnect with my family. And I am using my time to write more music. I am writing my time to spend doing a research, and I'm spending my time to working on the project that I've been saying that I'm going to do and I never did. So now I am like working on that. I am taking time to say, this is my time to actually create more art, is my time to actually put out the work that I've created so that people can witness it. Especially now, we need art more than ever. And my desire is really for all the artists who are creating the art to share this outside of the artist community. So I'm seeing a different value in creating art, different meaning in sharing art outside of the artist community. So
So, Hugo, as founder and artistic director of the I Am series, you created a platform which provided a space for artists to showcase their individualism, complex identities, and struggles with belonging. What motivated you to do that?
it's interesting you asked that. I've been asked this question so many times, and I feel like they're a common theme, but it's always different. What I, the reason that I started was really I needed space. I need a space to express myself. I need the space for me to share my words, my art, and I wanted to showcase other friends who are also seeking for a place to share their art. As an Eastern Asian woman who look like this when you're 36, and also I'm 4'10", so in the musical theater world, unless you are actively pursuing the career in the children's theater, the supply and demand don't meet because I really didn't see myself in any of the production that's being currently produced, and I really didn't see myself going nowhere. Although, like my friends would constantly tell me whenever I sing, like you should be on Broadway, but I will pause and say, but do you see what is currently going on Broadway, right? So for me, when I started, like I got nowhere else to sing, so I'm gonna create space for myself because I want to sing, right? So I open up a space for other artists just like me. They're like not having a place to perform, or they wanted to do songs that they would normally get casted, right? But they still get to share their story. They still get to embrace their identity and share the gift, share their voice, and share their message because it's in them. So it started from there and it started evolving almost on its own. I always tell people I felt like I was chasing whatever I Am series and people in the community were creating. So I was always chasing that, and it turned into something that's very beautiful. And I am so grateful for the experience that I get to have.
Beautiful. So, your upcoming off Broadway musical, The Propel of Chimney Town,
Yeah,
is based on a Japanese picture book. Can you tell us more about that?
absolutely. I am so excited to share about this. So, Papal of Chimney Town, just like you mentioned, it is based on Japanese picture book, and I have been part of this creative team since the beginning of this year. Like when a friend of mine approached me, hey, they're looking for a translator. And my initial instinct was like, I don't know if I can do it because I never translated thing in this capacity. So when I jumped in and I got into the meeting with one of the producer and heard the message of this story and what the intention of the original creator was, I had to jump in. So this story is about really believing in themselves, right? Believing in the vision that everybody else tell you that you can't do this, that everybody else tells you that that doesn't exist, right? But you still believing what you believe in and believing that I can create this even though nobody else can see it. And this is such an important message that we get to have, especially in this time. So one of his reasoning for writing this book was to breaking the capitalism mindset and like thinking the hierarchy and everything and break it from and opening up the conversation from the young age. But I'm so excited and proud to be a part of this production, not only the messaging of this word, but also being able to be the bridge between Japanese community and the US and ultimately to the global community. So I'm very pumped to be a part of the creative team. And unfortunately, we had to postpone the initial production because of the COVID-19, but we're hoping to get the production up and running before this year ends.
So Yuko, as a last word that you would want to impart on our audience, what would you say?
I had to say, love yourself.
Thank you so very much for being part of the Quarantine Cafe. For those of you who want to get in contact with Yuko and see what her projects are, you can always look at the details below and follow her and be part of her projects as well. As far as the Quarantine Cafe, on Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern on Zoom, you can be part of the conversation or simply listen. We will be going on Facebook Live soon, so join in. See you then.